I've been pondering over what's been happening in Israel and on the Gaza Strip as a result of Hamas choosing to attack Israel. And one of the things that has concerned me, even though I am horrified at the bloodshed, the displacement of people, the capturing of individuals to hold as hostages, and the actual barbaric behaviour of Hamas. I am appalled at their behaviour. But I think we need to start looking at this conflict in a different mindset. We need to be able to look at it in terms of Israelis' participation, or the Israel state's participation in their control of both the West Bank and Gaza. Without a doubt, Israel is itself a terrorist state. And it appalls me to think that the mainstream media, while they're focusing on issues such as the insurgence of Hamas into Israel, the devastation that they have caused, and rightfully so, that needs to be discussed. I understand all of that. But on the other hand, we need to start to look at how this situation came about in the first place. And I, for one, after watching a number of videos in relation to this subject, and particularly the way Israel has dominated certain areas around it, such as the West Bank, such as taking over the Palestinian nation as such, and then converting it into the Israel state, and the way that Israel's people who are of not necessarily the Jewish faith, but certainly people that align with Israel, see themselves as superior to the Palestinians. They have, in fact, brought about a sense of apartheid on the West Bank, and they've certainly brought about a complete segregation of Palestinian people in Gaza by turning Gaza into an open-air prison. It is shocking to me to think that mainstream media and governments in general, and our Australian government also, has chosen to highlight the atrocities, and only the atrocities, done by Hamas, and the fact that they are ignoring the atrocities done by Israel. Now, Israel has chosen, for whatever reason, to impose itself, particularly in the West Bank, in ways which are absolutely horrifying. Now, I'm going to put a link down below of a video that I've just been watching in relation to all of this, where an American woman who has a Palestinian father who lived in the West Bank, and she's revisiting this site and talking about the changes that have been made in there since 1996, or whenever there was a incident where a Palestinian man went into a synagogue or whatever and destroyed and killed a whole host of people. That seemed to change everything. Not that I'm condoning that sort of behaviour by any stretch of the imagination, but it was the beginning of the Israeli occupation of and change in the way that they structured the West Bank. Most of these people live in fear and terror on a continuing basis because of the presence of the Israeli military. There's a particular example of a man who has a checkpoint at the door of his home, and as he leaves the home he has to check in and out. A bizarre situation. Parts of the West Bank were a thriving community before the Israelis chose to take over. Settlers who are Israeli citizens who come and live in the West Bank have bought the land, and subjugate Palestinian people to, I guess, a sense of fear, a sense that they will always be arrested, the sense that they're investigated continually, and the sense that they cannot move from one place to another. There are certain streets on the West Bank whereby they can't even walk, they can't travel. There are places whereby if you cross one side of the road and you're Palestinian, you will be arrested. It is apartheid at its worst. And yet the media doesn't seem to recognise any of this. They're not focusing on the fact that Israel has chosen to subjugate Palestinian people in ways that most of us would find absolutely horrifying. This is not an excuse for the fact that Hamas have decided to come in and do what they did. That is a terrorist attack. No one's disputing that. Their behaviour is horrific. But it doesn't mean that we have to forget about what the Palestinians have had to suffer at the hands of the Israel state. I think it's about time we started to highlight some of these issues and start to talk about the impact that all of this has had on a nation of people who simply want to be free. To me, this is no different to apartheid in Africa and what that meant to black African people for decades. The same thing is happening elsewhere, but this is because it's the Middle East, does it mean that no one really cares? Because Israel is such a powerful nation and has alliances with the West, does that mean then that we can't get involved or that we can't even talk about it in meaningful ways? I think it's about time we started to have this conversation. There have been some news items which have talked about this. There was one on the ABC recently which has gone viral because the guy that was talking about it was an expert in this particular area, and he highlighted some of these points that I'm making now. We need to hold Israel to account for what they have done that has brought about the need for Hamas incorrectly, I agree, but it has pushed the political spectrum so far to the right that they then have felt the need to do what it is that they did. I think we need to find a way to be understanding of the Palestinian situation, not the terrorists. What they did was horrific, it was wrong. But we need to have a better understanding as to what life is like for Palestinian people who live in Gaza and who live on the West Bank. What would that experience be like? Would we want to live in that sort of environment under those sorts of controls? To have every minute of every day viewed by others as being either right or wrong, being arrested for simply crossing to one side of the road, to be viewed as lesser than, to be put upon in ways which denigrate our own sense of self. It's interesting when you hear the Palestinians talk about what it's like to live in the West Bank, and the fact that many of them refuse to leave because they see it as their own home. There's one woman who said that she'd been offered to be paid a large sum of money just to leave. And she wouldn't, because she believes this is her home. This is the place in which she has to live and she has to fight for the things that she believes in. The dedication that these people have to remain is outstanding. It blows me away. And I'm just saddened, I think, to think that we allow these issues to exist as they have for decades now, and we choose to say or do nothing about them. I'm making this video now because I think it's about time that we did. That it's about time our governments recognised what Israel is doing to people in the West Bank and also Gaza, and that we need to make a political stand against the atrocities that are perpetrated against the Palestinian people by the Israeli government. I'm not suggesting for a moment that all Israelis agree. Lots of Israelis actually don't agree with their own government. In fact, Netanyahu has been endeavouring to fight allegations of corruption, and in order to do so, he plans to change the law so that he doesn't get placed in jail. Now, the system itself that they have in Israel, we might see it as a democratic system, but it isn't really. It's something else. It's kind of more of an autocracy under the guise of democracy. So we need to call this stuff out for what it is, and we need to find a way by which Palestinian people can be freed so that they don't have to go through what they're currently experiencing, and so that Israel doesn't have to go through also what it is experiencing. The situation needs to be resolved. I know that people have for years been endeavouring to do so. The United Nations been involved, the US, other countries in and around the Middle East have been involved, but they've failed. And so maybe this is a watershed moment. This is a moment whereby things can change and hopefully should change. Thanks for being with me, everybody. Take care, look after yourselves, and be safe.